The practice of human narrative has crossed 3 milestones. The appearance of language was the first. The second was the written word. Written language is still our prime tool set for thinking and the transmission of ideas. Context records mark only the third time in history the human family has adopted a new discipline of language. Through a grammar based in technology, context records transact language and time without the formalized rules we find with the written word. The practice of written grammar, though, is the practice of thinking, at least the way we've known it. When I said we'd been slightly confused about something ever since, well, this is what we're slightly confused about. What happens when you engage a record system that changes the way you think? It's a huge issue. Language is defined by 2 transactions, thinking and speaking. Written records are defined by authoring and publishing. With context records, authoring and transmission are still under development. To fully engage context records, we face 2 challenges. One involves authoring. Chip and his research on visual synthesis focuses on this specifically. The other challenge is transmission, and for the last few minutes, this is precisely what we've been doing, transmitting. This rhetorical form is known, in almost a generic sense, as scribing. It's not just sketch work. It employs a visual intention tightly drawn to the written word. On screen, there have been sketch-ins, visual analogies, metaphors, and relational diagrams. The intended effort has been to widen the narrative bandwidth. How is scribing different from any other visualization technique? Well, in a way, it's not. Ask someone what they like about scribing, and a couple of things usually come up. One is, it keeps your attention. Reminds me of American Bandstand when they'd ask some kid to rate a new song. I like it because you can dance to it. Well, that's what I like about scribing. Your brain can dance to it. The other thing that tends to get said is scribing drives understanding. Every time I see a new piece from RSA Animate, and if you haven't seen the work, you owe it to yourself. But this is exactly the way I feel. A well-scribed piece gives me a sense of content. But if visualization has been around for the last 20,000 years, what makes today's practice of scribing different? Well, as we've pointed out, one big distinction is that it's authored as a context record. It has the specification of text about it, but it's deployed across time and context, and that's a huge difference. As a writer, I understand a written page in terms of a thesis supported by points of evidence. With a scribe, nothing changes, except that the words are conveyed through audio. This frees up space for the thing that characterizes scribing most. You can create a visual context, an additional zone of intention that amplifies the thesis and the supporting points. This additional space allows you to broaden the perceptual bandwidth. Within this new zone, you amp up the meaning with diagrams, overstatement, understatement, and lame sight gags. The power of the form lies in the potential for visual analogy. Without adding a new layer of grammar, the client can ingest more information and, if anything, do it without a correspondent increase in processing. As an author, this means I have a tool that pretty much lets me go anywhere to any subject without worrying about the fog index. Scribing liberates dense content. This stands to be revolutionary in terms of educational narrative. This new rhetorical zone has one other highly significant characteristic: user completion. Thomas Mulholland's alpha flatline was a measure of TV viewing, the continuing legacy that ennobles our race with gifts like Jackass and Jersey Shore. With scribed content, the client is not a passive observer, but forced to interaction. They hear the text, then decipher and decode the relational analogies. And when they've completed the transaction, they'll probably have an expanded mind space and a new understanding. This interaction between text and context may result in the highest form of narrative interactivity the planet has ever seen.